Hello there. Those responsible at the BBC are used to the continuous fire of criticism from the right wing media and from the Conservative government of Boris Johnson, who is still Prime Minister. On Wednesday evening, however, the most famous public broadcaster in the world got a lot of tinder from one of its ex stars, Emily Maitlis, who had been leading for decades before she left in the spring and believes that the top broadcasters all too often give in to criticism from Downing Street while hosting BBC magazines. An active agent of the Conservative Party is now responsible for the supposed balance. The 51-year-old journalist also warned her ex employer not to take a crouching stance on Brexit. It comes across as a conspiracy against the public, she says. Maitlis gave her speech at the Edinburgh TV Festival, which brings together the main media makers. Accordingly, a great deal of attention is paid to their criticism. In addition, the presenter is one of the many prominent names who have left the BBC in recent months. On the one hand, the considerable brain drain has to do with urgently needed savings. Culture Minister Nadine Dorries ordered the broadcaster to go through a brutal downsizing program on its 100th birthday, frozen broadcasting fees for 2 years, and made future fund dependent on specifications in the personnel structure. On the other hand, political dissatisfaction is widespread in the company. Both Chairman Richard Sharp and the General Manager Tim Davie are close to the Conservatives. Like Maitlis, many BBC journalists have the impression that the broadcasters are too much in league with those in power. Maitlis' criticism of the wall of silence on the subject of Brexit is well received, as it corresponds to a widespread feeling among many Britons. The media and politicians, not least the opposition Labour Party, are shirking an open discussion about the consequences of the 52% of the electorate in 2016 and what they brought about with the exit from the EU. These include a massive drop in exports to the EU and long queues at the Channel port of Dover, the interruption of important research collaborations, and the lowest point in British-Irish relations for a quarter of a century, caused by the dispute over Northern Ireland. The director reacted, quite picked to the allegations of Conservative influence. Robbie Gibb, somewhat melodramatically referred to by Maitlis as an agent, has been a member of the current 13-strong supervisory board for a good year. He previously worked for the BBC for decades, most recently as head of politics, before serving for 2 years as communications director for Prime Minister Theresa May. His criticism of actual or perceived political correctness in the BBC's journalistic approach is shared by many Conservatives, including critics of the Johnson government. A BBC spokesman defended Gibb. The board was collectively responsible for the channel's partisan independence. Completely wrong is also the allegation that Gibb prevented the appointment of politically unpopular journalists to senior positions at the BBC, they say. The Royal Charter, issued every 10 years, expressly lifts the broadcaster beyond direct political influence. On the other hand, agreement with the government is one of the most important tasks of those responsible for broadcasting. Over the years, the chairman and intendant have resisted the insinuations of royalty in Downing Street, well, let's say more or less well. Margaret Thatcher appointed a confidant as chairman in 1986 with the explicit aim of firing the general manager. Within a few months, this task was completed. The model of public service broadcasting has been spared the party political occupation of important functions, as is customary in Germany and Austria. A new royal charter must be agreed by 2026. That's an opportunity for the Conservatives to rein in the giant. The hostility is also unlikely to change when Prime Minister Johnson's successor is decided early next month. The favourite, Secretary of State Liz Truss, in particular, is in no way inferior to her previous boss when it comes to mocking remarks about the supposedly insubordinate broadcaster. She may even leave Minister of Culture Doris in office. Oh boy. She likes to attack groupthink and an alleged lack of objectivity in the BBC. And don't forget her role model. At least as great is the challenge posed by Amazon and Netflix, whose series and films are particularly popular with young people. On the other hand, the audience of conventional TV stations is getting older. It doesn't help that the British still consider their Auntie Beep, as the broadcaster is popularly known, to be 70% credible, far more than comparable institutions. If the license fee stays at £159 a year per household, the media giant will need to save up to £1.4 billion by 2027. Davey has introduced harsh austerity measures, always accompanied by howls of anger from many of his 1,500 employees, but also from the public. The attempt to relocate programs from the headquarters in London was intensified. In doing so, the station management is responding to the government's wish: greater consideration of neglected regions. Now, the science and climate team is being relocated to Cardiff in Wales, which has resulted in an exodus of the well-established team. Among other things, the well-known faces, Chief Reporter David Shukman and climate change specialist Roger Horrobin, took their hats. The news channels, previously divided between Germany and abroad, are being merged, which is accompanied by dozens of job cuts. Every year, there's also a dispute about salaries. When presenting the annual report, the BBC coyly pointed out that there was extremely tough competition for the best talent. The list was endorsed by 70 celebrity presenters and top executives earning more than £150,000 a year. The popular football expert, former national centre forward Gary Lineker, was once again the undisputed number one with an annual salary of €1.6 million. But even savings master Davey does not have to starve. His salary rose last year by 10% to €618,000. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.